All right, so I'm going to go ahead then and get started with my opening remarks. Welcome everyone to the 16th Annual Land Boards Awards Ceremony. As everyone on the board knows, every year the State Land Board honors exceptional projects and partners for their contributions to protecting and enhancing Oregon's treasured natural resources. To this date, more than 30 awards have been presented to extraordinary recipients across our state. They are amazing things happen when Oregonians can work together to help our lands and our waters thrive. And this year's examples are excellent illustrations of what can be done when many hands join in. So today we're presenting a wetland award, a stream award, and 2 partnership awards. And Treasurer Reed is going to present our first award. So take it away, Treasurer Reed.
Thank you, Governor. I wish we were doing this in person, but this is a good substitute. I'm happy to present the Wetland Award to the ODOT Vernal Pool Mitigation and Conservation Bank Restoration Project, which has returned native species to nearly 200 acres of rare vernal pool wetland habitat in Jackson County. Vernal pools fill during the rainy season and dry up in the summer heat. These are unique plants and animals that have evolved to survive a really harsh cycle. And they include threatened species like the vernal pool fairy shrimp and endangered plants like the Cook's desert parsley and large flowered woolly meadow foam. Much of Jackson County's vernal pool habitat has been lost over time. And this 8-year project tested new technology and techniques to restore those vernal pools. For example, the team used historic aerial photos and bare earth LiDAR data to identify likely pool locations, and then began slowly and precisely removing soil from those vernal pools. The scientists and ODOT equipment operators worked together in a process very carefully that resembled archaeology using excavators. This project also included an ever-growing number of partners, from plant nurseries to local schools to nonprofits to other state and federal agencies. And years of hard work, innovation, and collaboration resulted in what we're celebrating today, an outstanding outcome for Oregon. The data they collected really shows the success of the project. The vernal pool areas doubled. The fairy shrimp population increased 4-fold, and the desert parsley population is now more than 10,000 mature plants, and the meadow foam population has become too large to count. So this project is indeed, as you said, Governor, an excellent illustration. It's exceeded expectations from every angle, setting a new standard for how habitat restoration can be done. And today with us to accept the award are Paul Benton from ODOT, Keith Perchemelidis, I hope I got that somewhat close, from the Nature Conservancy, and Cam Patterson from CC Patterson and Associates. Happy to hear from Mr. Benton for a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Treasurer Reed, and thank you to the State Land Board for honoring our project with this award. This is a really cool award to be receiving, kind of at the end of a decade of work that we've put out on the site. So thank you very much for that. And thanks for Allie for all the work she's done to get this together. We'd all love to be there in person, but she's done a lot of work making this virtual meeting happen. So we're happy for that. My fellow honorees, Keith with the Nature Conservancy and Cam with CCPA, we hold this award together with ODOT, and we couldn't have done it without your decade-long commitment to the project. So we thank you for everything that you've contributed to this project. We've worked together collaboratively over this decade to accomplish what we have. I thank my manager, Jim Collins, and our Region 3 leadership for being supportive of this project through the years. We saw early on how mitigation helps deliver our transportation program. And then over the decade, we've seen the key projects in our region go to construction due in part to having this mitigation site available. That includes our Welcome Center on I-5, the 140 Roundabout Project, the Rogue Valley Expressway, just to highlight a few of those. One of the coolest things we're able to do with this project is work with our ODOT maintenance folks. So thanks to our managers and our equipment operators, we were on the ground with some great folks that work on our maintenance teams. Wayne Screvens, Craig, Perry, Doyle, Billy, Jim, Brian, all were with us, especially highlight Wayne. He was with us all 8 years. We did this work every season, and we appreciate having those guys on our project. DSL, State Lands, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, all collaborated with us through the years. We built a great seed program with the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service and their Bend Seed Extractory to get those native plant seed materials available to put out on the site once we were done. Couldn't have done it without those guys, and just all the project collaborators over the 10 years. Bee Girl Organization, Plant Oregon, Strauss Ecological Services, Prolon, just to name a few. You know, these guys were all there helping us out when we needed. And a special thanks to our families. I mean, we were 8 years we did this through the summer, so they put up with limited family vacations and us coming home full of dust and breathing smoke, you know, all summer long. So they put up with that. This was going to be the year that I was going to take them on a long family trip. Everyone's plans changed with what's happening, and so to make it up for them next year. And special shout out to my daughter Caitlin. She's turning 15 today, so she's taking her driver's test right now. So hopefully she's doing well with that. And yeah, and just on behalf of everybody that's collaborated on this project, just thank you for this award, and it's something we all share together. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Happy birthday, Caitlin, and thanks for recognizing your entire team. These things don't happen on their own, so we appreciate the recognition for everybody else. We're all giving you a round of applause virtually, and I'm happy to turn it over to Secretary Klarner for our next award.
Thank you, Treasurer Reed. I am pleased to present the Stream Award to the Opal Springs Fish Passage Project, a long-time collaborative effort to provide native steelhead and salmon with safe, easy entry to 125 miles of the Crooked River habitat. This project, which raised the Opal Springs Dam pool height and installed a fish ladder, was one of Oregon's highest priority fish passage projects. Project partners worked together for decades to support, fundraise, and advocate for completion of the project. Their efforts paid off. In November 2019, just hours after completion of the fish ladder, a steelhead entered the Crooked River without human help for the first time in more than 50 years. In the months since, 28 steelhead have gained safe passage. The Deschutes Valley Water District's collaborators included the Crooked River Watershed Council, Project Team Kleinschmidt Group, OTAC, Jacobs, and RSCI Group, and partners with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, the Oregon Water Resources Department, the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, NOAA, the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, Portland General Electric, Trout Unlimited, the Energy Trust of Oregon, and the Deschutes Partnership. So much can be accomplished when partners join to achieve a project, and the Opal Springs Fish Passage is an exceptional example. Joining us today to accept the award are Joel Garrett of Deschutes Valley Water District, Chris Gannon of the Crooked River Watershed Council, and Finley Anderson of Kleinschmidt Group, as well as many partners. Congratulations to all of you, and everyone, please join me giving this project and this team a round of applause. And now back to you, Governor, for the presentation of the final awards.
Thank you, Secretary Clarno. I just have to say, like Treasurer Reed and Secretary Clarno, I wish we could all be together in person so we could congratulate all of you for your amazing work. Both of those prior awards brought me to tears. So I hope I can get through this one without crying. So I am really, really pleased to present a partnership award to Solve and Metro who are collaborative, compassionate partners in the state's ongoing efforts to clean up camps along Oregon's waterways. The partnership is a wonderful example of state and local governments and nonprofit organizations working together to address tough issues thoughtfully. Camp cleanups are complex work, particularly when we are respecting both the human beings and the natural resources. The Department of State Lands team quickly realized this work needed partners with different skills and strength, like Metro and Solve. Metro's RID patrol team cleans up dumped or abandoned garbage, work that honestly is increasingly involving, engaging our houseless community. Solve's volunteer-powered cleanup projects have helped protect the health of Oregon's lands and waterways for decades. Respect and responsiveness are at the forefront for these partners, along with a we can help approach that gets things done. Here today to accept the award are Chris Carrico from Solve, and from Metro, Councilor Juan Carlos Gonzalez, and members of the Metro RID Patrol Program Team, Juan Garcia, Ryan Torgeson, Daniel Garcia, Pune Abdu Hosseini, SB Collins, Sandy Strait, Dwayne McQueen, Robin Matsushima, V. Corbello, Rob Nathan, Brody Abbott, and Stephanie Rawson. Congratulations, everyone. And I'm very excited to give our very own Councilor Gonzalez the opportunity to make a few comments.
Governor Brown, thank you so much. And of all the amazing partners and names that were just called out, I feel very lucky to be the one to share some remarks. You know, as Treasurer Reed mentioned a bit ago, you know, none of this work happens alone, and it really takes, you know, a lot of really committed, passionate people to do this work. And you know, I did also put my comments in the chat just in case we didn't get the chance to say something. But again, thank you for this honor. Our staff are incredibly proud of this work. Without our partners, we couldn't be able to provide the programs and services that we are delivering to support people when it's needed the most. These partners include POIC, Constructing Hope, Central City Concern, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the Port of Portland, and our regional houseless services providers. And we couldn't do it without them. Thank you so much again for this award.
Well, I'll give you a round of applause and virtual hugs. So congratulations.
Governor Brown,
right.
do you mind if I think we inadvertently skipped over Opal Springs, if we might hear from them as well.
Sure.
I'd go back and see who that was, but I think we were going to hear.
Thank you. This is Joel Garrett with the Deschutes Valley Water District.
Thank you.
Just to say a few things, we are extremely proud of this project and the early success this has had in the Deschutes Basin. Like was mentioned in the comments, this is a very long-term project and a very collaborative project with many project partners. And on behalf of the Deschutes Valley Water District and all of our project partners, we'd like to thank the State Land Board for this recognition.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. And we're really glad to see the steelhead swimming again. And hopefully there will be a lot more for those of us who like to watch them and then like to eat them. So our final award this morning is going to it is actually the first ever Catalyst Award, and is going to Jefferson Jacobs of the Oregon Natural Desert Association. The commitment to engaging volunteers in restoration projects honestly has enhanced the lives of thousands, along with, of course, thousands of acres. The work Jefferson does to organize, motivate, and guide volunteers is some of the hardest and most important work a restoration professional can do. He's not only enhancing state lands and waterways, he's encouraging passionate stewardship, designing projects that rely on volunteers to do meaningful restoration work, an idea Jefferson calls totally far out, has resulted in some incredibly huge benefits for Oregon. For example, in a recent habitat enhancement project at Cottonwood Canyon State Park, Jefferson coordinated multi-day work outings with more than 100 volunteers who contributed more than 2,000 work hours. Jefferson's particular talent is inspiration, say his ANDA colleagues. Whatever a project needs, whether it's more hands, more resources, or frankly, community support, his spark lights the way for others to get involved. As I mentioned earlier, the Land Board Awards honor exceptional partners and projects. Inspired by Jefferson, the Oregon Department of State Lands this year adds a new category of partnership award. He is the first recipient of the Catalyst Award, which will henceforth recognize an individual partner whose efforts advance significant change. Luckily for all of us, Jefferson's with us today to accept the Catalyst Award. Congratulations, Jefferson, and the mic is yours.
Governor, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. It really means a lot, and it's an especial honor to be included in an awards proceeding that's highlighting all these other amazing accomplishments that we just saw from the previous awardees. It's really inspiring to see the great work that's being accomplished around the state. I wanted to thank specifically our great partners at Oregon State Parks, Jean Jankitis, who was the biologist that started the work. She's now working in the Wallowas. Bridget Tinsley, biologist with State Parks, who shepherded along and helped us with further funding. And David Spangler, the manager at the park. Their support has been amazing from the beginning, and their trust. I'd like to also thank Sue Greer at OWEB for funding, additional funding for the project, and her trust and guidance. But most importantly, I want to recognize the more than 120 individual volunteers that have donated thousands of hours of actually really hard work in the hot sun and sometimes in the freezing cold too, to make this project a reality. So in recognition of that, I'd like to read out each one of the 120 names one by one. No, I'm just kidding. But I would like.
You gotta go fast.
They deserve the
Yes.
recognition. Their blood, sweat, and tears for sure. But it gets to the point where there's so many. Just like every project that has come up so far today has recognized, these types of projects don't happen in a vacuum, and it takes collaboration with sometimes folks that you may not think you would collaborate with originally, and trust, and really working together to make something bigger that can happen. That's what I'd like to convey. But just while I have your ear, just finally, I would like to take a moment to use this opportunity to highlight the effectiveness of partnering with volunteer organizations, and how volunteers are an effective workforce for achieving meaningful ecological restoration. And I really just want to finish by encouraging agencies, land managers, municipalities, and volunteer organizations to really reach out to each other and look at how, from beginning, volunteer labor can be incorporated into projects to lend meaningful hands to the work and result in benefits which will feel good but go way beyond being just feel good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jefferson. Let's all give Jefferson a round of applause. And Jefferson, we also are incredibly grateful for all of the volunteers that you inspire and encourage every single day. So thank you, thank you, thank you. With that, unfortunately, we have to conclude the awards ceremony. So again, I want to say congratulations to all of our Land Board Award recipients, and just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us this morning to celebrate these exceptional projects and their partners. Let's do one more round of applause, and please stay safe out there. Oh, did I miss something?
No, well, I wanted to show these awards that they'll be getting.
Okay.
These tiles, these glass tiles are streams and wetlands designed by Pacific Northwest artist Ann Kavanaugh.
Mm-hmm.
So each Land Board Award recipient will be receiving one with their name. And like you, I cried with the first one that I was proofreading, and it just continued from there. These are amazing awards, and we're so glad to have started the Catalyst Award this year with Jefferson Jacobs.
Well done. All right, thanks everybody. Now on to our regularly scheduled program. And I do not have a gavel with me, but with that, I'm going to open the October 13th, 2020 Land Board meeting at roughly 10:29 a.m. The first item on the agenda is on the consent agenda is request for approval of the minutes from the August 11th, 2020 State Land Board meeting.
I would move approval.
Okay. Secretary Clarno moves approval of the August 11th, 2020 State Land Board meeting minutes. I hear a second from Treasurer Reed. Hearing and seeing no objections, so approved. All right, Director Walker, on to action item number 2.
Thank you, Governor, and good morning to everyone. This morning, item 2 is a request for direction to complete a study to determine the existence of and title to any historically filled lands within the waterway of the Rogue River between river miles 0 and 157.5. This study will also produce additional information to support an existing navigability report and determination for the Rogue River between river mile 68.5 and 157.5. The authorities are set below, and I see our esteemed counsel Matt DeVore is with us if you have any questions. The Oregon legislature in 2015 passed Senate Bill 912. This established a process and a deadline for determining any potential state land claim to lands created and submerged, and submersible lands were filled prior to May 28, 1963. To date, budget and position constraints have limited the department's ability to establish a stable program to review the approximately 1,200 river miles of state-owned waterways for potential fill locations. The proposed study here of the Rogue River between river miles 0 and 157.5 will help the department assess the resources needed to complete this work before the statutory deadline of December 31, 2025, which is rapidly approaching. An October 2015 Oregon Court of Appeals opinion required an improved description of the state's ownership claim to support the navigability determination issued by the Land Board in June of 2008. We can provide that opinion to you if you'd like to read it in its entirety. The case site is Hardy versus Land Board 274 or app 262, 2015. Oregon statute and department rules provide an outline for completing a study of historically filled lands. There are key steps involved. We obtain direction from you, the Land Board, and provide public notice of the study. We then complete the study by preparing a draft report and submitting it to the Land Board. providing an opportunity for public review and comment on the draft report, which is critical, submitting final report to the land board for decisions regarding adopting the report and declaring the claim, providing public notice to interested parties and owners of record, and recording the declaration with the county and resolving with owners as appropriate. An outreach and communication plan will be developed to encourage public participation and ensure meaningful comment opportunities. The department anticipates comment opportunities will be held virtually, as we're doing today, because we are still in a pandemic. Lessons learned as the study is completed will inform the department's approach for completing studies of the remaining waterways. We are pleased that Lowell Anthony of Dogami, Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, will be assisting us in the technical aspects of this work, because part of our delay has been we've been using limited duration positions and they don't stay with us after we train them up. So now we're going to help a sister agency and they will help us as well. The documentation of the line of ownership along the waterway developed for the filled land study will also be used to revise the navigability report to provide more complete property descriptions. We will provide notice of the plan work to supplement the navigability report when providing notice of the historically filled land study. And certainly the public will be encouraged to participate. If the land board adopts the revised navigability report and reaffirms the claim to title of the waterway, the department will issue public notice of the declaration and provide a copy of the declaration to each owner of record of land described in the declaration. Department staff recommends that the State Land Board direct the department to complete a study of filled lands on the Rogue River between River Mile 0 and 157.5, and that information obtained during this study be used to supplement the existing navigability report and determination from 2008. There is a map of the Rogue River showing the boundaries of the proposed filled land study and existing navigability determination in your appendices A. So that is where we are on that, Madam Governor.
Thank you. Having tackled these issues for over 20 years, the chair is going to move the staff recommendation to complete a study to determine the existence of and title to any historically filled lands within the waterways of the Rogue River between River Mile 0 and 157.5. The study hopefully will also produce additional information to support an existing navigability report and determination for the Rogue River between River Mile 68.5 and 157.5. Is there a second, or is there any objection to the motion? I see a second from Treasurer Reed. And I'm not seeing any objection to the motion. Otherwise, Secretary Clarno would be jumping up and down or raising her hand. With that, the motion is approved, and we're going to move on to item number 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. And we have signed our IGA intergovernmental agreement with Dogami, and we'll be ready to start.
Great.
Item number 3 on our agenda is an informational item. It's the Aquatic Resource Management Annual Report, and it's quite lengthy because we do a lot here at the department. But I've asked Deputy Bill Ryan of Operations to give us some highlights today, because I think they're very important for you to know what we're doing here at the department. So, Bill? You're muted.
I think after 7 months, I would not forget to unmute myself, but it's still a challenge.
You're in really good company.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, Governor Brown, Secretary Clarno, and Treasurer Reed. For the record, I am Bill Ryan, Deputy Director of Operations at the Department of State Lands, and it's my pleasure to provide to present the Aquatic Resource Management Program's annual report for fiscal year 2020. This report provides information regarding management of state-owned waterways and fulfills the annual report requirements of the state's removal fill law. The report prepared by my staff, as Director Walker mentioned, is comprehensive and provides a lot of detail I will discuss overall trends and highlight items of interest. So the Department's Aquatic Resource Management Program manages the state-owned lands underlying all navigable and tidally influenced waterways granted to Oregon at statehood. These lands are owned by the state and managed to maintain the use by the public, including the public trust values of navigation, commerce, fishing, and recreation. DSL manages over 5,000 active proprietary authorizations allowing use of these waterways. On average, we issue about 126 new authorizations and renew 519 existing authorizations per year. There are a couple different efforts. There are major efforts that I wanted to highlight. One is our dealing with abandoned and derelict vessels and illegal camping, or the ADVAC issue on these state-owned waterways. The department has witnessed an increase in the frequency and cost of abandoned and derelict vessels in recent years and has dedicated more and more staff time and financial resources to the issue. Our ADVAC team, which was formed in 2019, has increased the department's responsiveness and coordination of this work to leverage DSL's resources on ADVAC issues throughout the state. The department recently hired one full-time compliance and outreach specialist who will be dedicated to ADVAC issues, and that should really help in our ability to address the issue. Oregon, particularly metro areas, has experienced a rise in houselessness that is expected to increase as the continued impacts of COVID-19 are realized. The department continues to work with the Oregon State Marine Board in cost sharing for the disposal of abandoned and derelict vessels, or what we call ADVs. The department, in partnership with the Marine Board, removed 24 ADVs from state waterways in fiscal year 2020. In addition to the growing problem of ADVs on state-owned waterways, there's still a growing incidence of unauthorized transient use on state-owned banks and islands, specifically overnight camping. The major concerns around these unauthorized uses are the accumulation of trash, debris, and human waste, the environmental degradation caused from the camps and fires, restriction and loss of public access by these camps, and illegal activities occurring at the camps. So DSL staff has been working with new partners such as the Metro Regional Government and SALT, the recipients of the Land Board's Team Award today, also the Port of Portland and City of Portland, Multnomah County Sheriff and others, Oregon State Police and others, on several camp cleanups in the Portland metro area. In fiscal 2020, more than 43 tons of solid and hazardous waste was removed from state-owned land in the Portland metro area. And that's, and those areas are continuing to be used, and so this is an ongoing effort. It's not like we can just go into an area, clean it up, and all is well. We need to continue our enforcement efforts and maintain that enforcement to let folks know that they can't camp in those areas. The other thing I wanted to touch base on is the Portland Harbor Superfund site. DSL and the Oregon Department of Transportation are the lead agencies working with the Department of Justice, defending the state against liability claims under the federal CERCLA law for historic pollution in the lower Willamette River. 2020 was a milestone in that DSL and ODOT, in partnership with the City of Portland, has made significant investments to encourage and facilitate remedial design work by multiple potential responsible parties. We actually offered an incentive, an $80,000 per acre incentive for remedial design work for active cleanup areas that were identified in EPA's record of decision for cleanup of the Portland Harbor Superfund site. We had multiple potential responsible parties responding, and so at this point, nearly all of the Portland Superfund cleanup site is now under an order with EPA for remedial design, which is really good news because that means we can move into actual cleanup once those remedial designs are done in the next couple of years or so. The department also is providing funding, and staff participated in public entity partnership efforts, including the Willamette Cove remedial design, an institutional control implementation and assurance plan, and an information management plan. And so really the bottom line of this is the department is still working hard on the defense piece against liability, but also as a potential responsible party is investing in and encouraging work to actually get toward cleanup. And so that's very good news. So moving on to the Remove Fill regulatory program. DSL also protects the state's waterways and wetlands through administration of Oregon's Removal Fill Law, which was initially enacted in 1967. The Removal Fill Law was passed to ensure protection and the best use of Oregon's water resources for wildlife habitat, public navigation, fishing, commercial and recreational uses. The Wetlands Conservation Act was passed in 1989 to specifically protect wetlands and the important functions and values they provide for Oregonians, including water quality, water storage, flood protection, and habitat for fish and wildlife. Protections for Oregon's water resources are more important than ever with the threats of climate change and population growth and increased development pressure. The report has quite a bit of information about permit numbers and different types of permits and that sort of thing. I won't go into detail on that, other than to say that the Aquatic Resource Management Program staff is very busy. We've witnessed a steady increase in permit volumes since the 2008 recession. We've been at pre-recession volumes of applications since 2018. Permit issuance numbers leveled off finally in 2020 at 570, but that's still a historically high number. So we're busy. We'll have to see what happens with the COVID-19 recession, and we did not see a big drop off, but of course the fiscal year ended in June, so we really haven't had time to see the effects of that moving forward. The removal fill permit process is designed to protect wetlands and other waters of the state and to ensure functions and values lost to unavoidable impacts are replaced. And the department's goal is no net loss of wetlands over time from the aggregate of property development impacts and the creation and restoration of wetlands to offset those losses. In fiscal year 2020, there was a net gain of 42.5 acres of wetland from authorized activities. So at least under authorized activities, the things are moving in the right direction. Another important program area that I'd like to highlight is permit compliance monitoring and enforcement. Compliance monitoring and enforcement is critical to ensure the removal fill law protecting Oregon's waterways and wetlands is respected and followed, and that the various streamlined permits available are still protective of the environment. In general, permit compliance is strong. The department staff monitored 115 of the 504 permits that expired in the prior 2 years to look at permit effectiveness, and those numbers are shown on Table 9 of the report. 89% of those were in compliance with key permit requirements. But one of the purposes of that monitoring is to see, are there areas of weakness, areas to look into to see for potential improvement or adaptive management. And the one point of concern that was brought out by that review was the general permit for transportation, which showed a relatively low compliance rate of 68%. So the department will be looking into this to see if changes in permit conditions or guidance are needed. The department has been working in the past year implementing a couple pieces of legislation that passed in 2019. House Bill 2436 directs the department to put together recommendations, including proposed legislation to allow DSL to continue plans to take on partial assumption of the Federal Clean Water Act 404 dredge and fill program that's currently administered by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Successful implementation of a partial 404 assumption program would result in saving applicants the time and money of obtaining overlapping state federal approvals over development in wetland and waters, and could have a positive impact on the state's housing availability and economic development. Partial 404 assumption means that DSL would apply to the Environmental Protection Agency to partially assume the 404 authorities from the Corps for development activities within urban growth boundaries, mining and activities associated with mining, and the creation and operation of mitigation banks statewide. As detailed in the report, the department has worked diligently in collaboration with state and federal agency partners, tribes, and stakeholders to understand and address their needs and concerns. The department will present a report to the legislature in November of this year with details of what partial 404 assumption program would look like and the resources required to implement such a program. The other piece of legislation the department worked on is House Bill 2437, which directs the Department of State Lands, Oregon Department of Agriculture, and Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to work together to put the Department of Agriculture in the lead on managing a notice-based process for reviewing removal fill activities in traditionally maintained agricultural drainage channels. Essentially, it's a highly conditioned exemption to the removal fill law for this specific activity of maintaining drainage in agricultural lands. The bill and the rules that ODA did in support of the bill provide significant protections for water resources in the legislation, including a new process where actually the process only applies to drainage channels that are seasonally dry. It excludes essential salmonid habitat and has multiple other best management practices. The Department of Agriculture conducted rulemaking this past spring and summer to implement these changes, However, there are still concerns from conservation organizations about potential effects to undisturbed wetlands, and the department is working with ODA and ODFNW to address those concerns. So, and to wrap up, something that's actually not addressed in the removal fill report, but is a follow-up to a presentation that we did in February to the Land Board regarding sustainable funding for the Aquatic Resource Management Program. We reported that the ARM program's revenues do not cover expenses, and the majority of revenue comes from waterway leases. Fees for the removal fill regulatory program do not cover those expenses, and this situation is compounded by unanticipated large expenses like the global cleanup in the Columbia River, the abandoned derelict vessels and illegal camping cleanups that we have to do, and the Portland Harbor Superfund site. So the basic permit fee structure of the removal fill program is based upon volume of material. It does not account for the complexity or scope of the project. And so you know, a relatively small, benign, easy to process permit application could cost $330. But a super expensive, very challenging multi-year process, like for instance, a certain LNG project that came to the department over the last several years, only has a fee of $1,600 or so, even though the amount of staff time and resources that go into it is far exceed that. So the department is looking at ways to restructure our permit fee process in order to address those inequities. Since the February meeting, DSL staff has been working to develop data collection tools, processes, and procedures to inform the creation of a new regulatory rate structure with tiers based upon project complexity, level of controversy, and other factors. The department has met with DEQ to discuss their recent fee changes that they've implemented and how they went about determining what that structure should look like and what the amounts would be. And we've also looked at other programs in other states as possible models. We'll begin collecting data in the next few weeks regarding staff time expenditures for different types of authorizations. And we plan to collect these data for 6 months and then assess whether they are adequate to be used to support a new rate structure. In the meantime, we'll be pulling together a stakeholder outreach and engagement plan to develop potential solutions and generate support for them. Ultimately, legislation and rulemaking will be needed to fully address the situation and restructure our funding for the Aquatic Resource Management Program. And then I'd like to close with just a comment of my own, and that's that the ARM program staff do outstanding work protecting the state's waterways and wetlands while enabling economic development and the exercise of free property rights. They do a tremendous amount of work with limited resources and show amazing dedication and diligence. They rapidly adapted to teleworking and social distancing last spring when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and they continue to provide a high volume and high quality work under challenging circumstances over these past 7 months. I just wanted to tell you that I'm very proud of how they've stepped up and leaned into the challenge. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions. Governor, you're muted now.
Now I'm the one who's muted. Thank you, Bill. Treasurer Reed, Secretary Clarno, do you have any questions?
Not for me, Governor. I appreciate the report.
Okay.
Not for me.
Thank you, Secretary Clarno. All right. Thanks, Bill. Really appreciate your hard work and really appreciate your team's hard work.
Thank you, Governor.
All right.
Thank you, Governor. And Bill, I do want to also give a shout out to the administrative team run by our Deputy Gene Strait, because without the administrative side of things, our great technical staff wouldn't be able to get their work done. So we've just got a terrific group of people here. So thank you. All right, we will move on to the next informational item in our agenda, the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve Report. Excuse me. I have a memo. I'll hit the highlights, and then there's also a very detailed report attached. So let me begin by saying the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve is a 5,900 acre natural area located in the Coos Estuary on the south coast of Oregon in Charleston. And had COVID-19 not happened, we would have had our August meeting at the South Slough this year, and we would have been able to show you all of the great things that they do. But we will reschedule that for another time. The reserve was created in 1974 as the very first reserve in the National Estuarine Research Reserve System. And it's a national network of estuaries that are protected and managed for the purposes of long-term research, education, and coastal stewardship. And I see that Bree Yednock, the reserve manager, is on the call today, so that's great. The system is administered with a partnership between NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the coastal states. In Oregon, the legislature established the South Slough through ORS 273.553, which also designated the Department of State Lands as the state partner for the reserve. The question of whether a different state partner would be a better fit for the South Slough has come up many times over the years. And South Slough's extensive and varied responsibilities and services really defy easy categorization. But in early 2018, when y'all hired me for the department, I was asked to complete ongoing work to evaluate whether alternative management options existed for the reserve. Over the past 2 years, we've engaged in a number of communications and research to determine whether that would be possible. And that report is included as Appendix A. And I really want to thank Bree Yednock, the reserve manager, and their most excellent staff for giving our communications director, Allie Ryan Hansen, sitting to my right today, some really great material to work with for this fabulous report. It is a very comprehensive report about the value of the South Slough and what it provides to the state of Oregon. The South Slough was designated, as I indicated, through the Coastal Zone Management Act on June 27, 1974, as the first unit in the system. Initial federal funding for the reserve was provided to the Department of Land Conservation and Development, which provided critical administrative support in the early years. However, with the acquisition of lands for creation of the reserve, a state partner that could oversee land transfers and title holdings was needed. So DSL was nominated to do just that. And our alignment with the educational programming offered through the reserve and the Common School Fund support of K through 12 public education, our stewardship of land and water led DSL to become the state partner in the early 1980s for the South Slough. In the early years, of course, there was a mix of general fund through DSL and ELCD, the Common School Fund, and annual operations awards from NOAA. But as those of us who have served in the legislature know, over the years, statewide budget cuts reduced general fund support for the reserve, and ultimately all general funds were removed from our budget bill during the 1997 legislative session. A companion bill transferred ownership of the South Slough property to the Common School Fund, allowing reserve operations to be supported with the fund's statutory revenue. Discussions with the land board at that time also noted exploration of other potential funding sources that may be necessary or desirable. So this has been continuing for quite some time. I set about evaluating the record as it existed when I joined the department in February of 2018. In 2014, DSL began conversations with the University of Oregon and Oregon State University to assess their interest, but lack of funding and fit were determined to be insurmountable obstacles. A DSL OSU U of O work group was formed. An agreement of cooperation was developed to facilitate a collaborative process for determining the feasibility of one or both universities managing the South Slough Reserve. The department, formalized exploration of management alternatives for the reserve within our strategic plan, our 2017-21 strategic plan. In March 2017, a work plan was developed for the evaluation process, but little progress was made due to leadership transition changes at the universities, the South Slough, and also the department. In early 2018, I began the work that you asked me to do. And so over the next 2 years, the reserve manager, Bree Yednock, and I had multiple conversations with Oregon State University and the University of Oregon, as well as the South Slough Management Commission, Friends of South Slough, tribes, and stakeholders. I provided the department, the land board, with an update on these conversations in February of 2019. That memo is included in the report. In these discussions, we learned that OSU's primary interest was ongoing partnership on programming and research, and they didn't have any extra money to run the reserve. The U of O remained interested, but funding, management structure, and stakeholder concerns presented significant obstacles. The reserve's management commissions, friends group, tribes, stakeholders universally supported DSL continuing as South Slough's reserve partner. Our evaluation also assessed how well South Slough aligns with DSL's priorities and contributions to Oregon. This is a tremendous opportunity for Oregon, and actually I'm glad that we have embraced it, because the reserve is a trusted source of data and information, educational programming, coastal training, as well as a safe, protected natural area for recreation, reflection, and a model for stewardship of public lands and waters. Their contributions extend far beyond the South Coast to people across Oregon and to regional and national initiatives through the National Estuarine Research Reserve System. And you will see your Appendix B, which was added this week, is a tremendous letter of support from NOAA indicating how valuable this reserve has been to the system. So the enduring connection that we have between the contributions of the South Slough and the priorities of the State Land Board and DSL are really undeniable. The work reflects our commitment, our trust in public resources, public trust resources, with the reserve's emphasis on thriving public lands and waters, directly contributing to our mission and goals. The leadership, support, and stability provided by this department has been essential to the South Slough Reserve successes. For example, from 2015 to 2020, the reserve brought in over $5.6 million in funding to support reserve-based projects and programs. In addition, the most recent competitive funding cycle of the National Estuarine Research Reserve Systems Science Collaborative, South Slough partnered on successful research proposals that awarded over $1.9 million to Oregon academic and nonprofit partners whose work will further understanding of both estuarine hydrology, impacts of local restoration projects, resilience of estuarine wetlands, and blue carbon. The department's 2-year evaluation identified the following key considerations that will conclude my comments today: the connection between education, stewardship of lands and waters, and land ownership. Common School Fund support has provided stability as envisioned by the legislature. The South Slough Reserve's physical property is an asset of the Common School Fund. Exploration of other funding sources, such as grants and other revenue, and having a state partner who can bring funding and administrative resources has been tremendous in their success. There is great potential for partnerships with the university system, but university management raises significant concerns with a suitable management structure, and changes to the reserve's existing emphasis on natural and cultural resource stewardship and education, which was a very significant issue for the tribes. The commission, the Friends of South Slough, the tribes, and the stakeholders, of course, universally support keeping the South Slough in our hands. Our focus on stewardship meets our strategic goals. The science, education, and outreach work aligns with and supports Oregon's priorities in climate change and wildfire prevention. Our reserve is a cornerstone on our South Coast, providing rich opportunities for research, education, recreation, and a model for stewardship. Our reserve programs extend across Oregon, and they have not diminished during the pandemic. The reserve has developed a breadth of online programming for schools and children. And as the first reserve in the system established nearly 50 years ago, the reserve provides a unique legacy for Oregonians. So after my 2 years of working on this project, I just wanted to recommend to you that I'd like to keep the reserve in the system. We have a lot to contribute. The staff, I think, has been nervous about these conversations over the years and would like some finality. I really think this is a good fit. They continue to raise funds through grants and awards and have just done a tremendous job of providing research and support to Oregon across the state. So that would be my recommendation. And I will continue to bring forward and tell you all about the great things that the reserve does for Oregon.
Thank you, Director Walker. Secretary Clarno, any questions or comments?
No, excellent report. Thank you, Vicki.
You're welcome.
Director Reed.
I appreciate the comprehensiveness and the diligence. You've covered all the details, and I appreciate it.
All right.
I'm kind of known for my research, and I thought it was really important. And so the South Slough staff was very involved in helping us put this report together. I just think it's a really good report that will stay here when the land board changes in the future, but this report will remain and show the good work of the South Slough Reserve.
Great. Thank you. And want to say thank you to Director of the South Slough, Bree Riednock, who's here with us today virtually. So thank you. I wish we could have come down in August. Obviously, the pandemic has put a damper on a lot of our plans collectively, and just really appreciate the great work you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Governor. We'll reschedule for another land board meeting at the reserve.
All righty. Take care. Be safe.
All right. Thank you, Governor. That concludes item number 4. We'll move on to agenda item 5 with your permission.
Sure.
All right, agenda item 5 is a report of the wildfire damage that we incurred. I know we didn't have as much damage as the Oregon Department of Forestry, but we did suffer some damage, so I wanted to let you know about that. Our forester, Ryan Singleton, prepared this memo for me. Approximately 1,227 acres of the department's forest land west of the Cascades burned in this year's wildfires. The affected land was in 5 different counties across 5 different fire incidents. All except 40 acres of those are common school forest land, which are certified forests managed by Oregon Department of Forestry. The chart outlines how many acres were in each fire. Some of the Fires have not yet been assessed on the ground. Ryan has not been able to get out and do his on the ground reconnaissance, but he did recently receive some remote sensing data, especially for the 640-acre parcel in Josephine County. And he's now thinking that our damage and loss is on the lower end instead of the high end. You will see the chart on the flip side of the page 2, that indicates the acres in the fire perimeter, the number of acres damaged, the volume of board feet lost, the stumpage value, the estimated total timber value lost, and the estimated cost to reforest. We will also be sharing in the proportionate cost of the wildfire protection that was offered through ODF and other resources. So while the losses could have been more significant, they could have been as high as 5 million. Ryan Singleton believes they're in the low range of 2.6 million, and the cost to reforest a little less than 200,000. So this time we squeaked by with just some damage. It could have been a whole lot worse, as I know it has been around the state. And this has been the most horrific fire season I've seen in my 64 years of being on this planet. And Governor, you've been a great leader at helping families get the resources they need to recover from these fires. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Walker. Yes, we've certainly had hundreds of thousands of acres scathed by wildfires, and unfortunately thousands of homes, and lost some Oregonians. It's been, frankly, the roughest wildfire season in recent memory for Oregon, that's for sure. Any questions or comments for the director regarding the wildfire report?
No.
Okay.
Right, then we'll move on, Governor, to informational item 6, which is the Board of Forestry Habitat Conservation Plan outcomes for the common school forest lands. And I'm going to turn this over to Bill Ryan to talk about, because he's been sitting on their advisory committee as they develop this plan for the Board of Forestry to make a decision just about a week ago on this, I think. A week ago today. So, Mr. Ryan, take it away.
Thank you, Vicki. Can folks hear me? I'd gotten a text saying that I was quiet before, so I changed my microphone. I sound okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Well, good morning again, Governor Brown and members of the board. For the record, I am Bill Ryan, Deputy Director of Operations at the Oregon Department of State Lands. And as Vicki mentioned, the Oregon Department of Forestry is pursuing development of a habitat conservation plan for management of the west side forest lands. ODF presented that draft HCP to their board a week ago today on October 6th, and the Board of Forestry directed the department to move forward with development of the HCP. That HCP would cover approximately 640,000 acres of ODF managed forest land west of the Cascades, and those lands include roughly 26,000 acres of common school forest land owned by the Department of State Lands. The HCP does not include the Elliott State Forest, which, as you know, is being developed under a separate HCP. The Department of State Lands has been partnering with ODF in development of the HCP. I'm a member of the steering committee, and Ryan Singleton, DSL's forester, is a member of the policy team developing that HCP. This memo summarizes the results of a comparative analysis commissioned by the Oregon Department of Forestry evaluating the expected outcomes and trade-offs for 3 potential forest management scenarios. And the executive summary of that report, which was prepared by Eco Northwest, can be found at the link in the memo. The comparative analysis resulted in relative ranking of key economic, conservation, and social outcomes for 3 forest management scenarios for the West Side forests. Those scenarios include continuing to implement the current forest management plan and the associated take avoidance approach to ESA compliance, implementing a draft revised forest management plan and the associated take avoidance approach to ESA compliance, but that draft forest management plan would allow a slightly more harvest than the current forest management plan does. And then the third scenario is implementing the HCP which include a companion draft forest management plan that would address measures to inform management of the state forest lands for other non-timber resource values. The outcomes analyzed and ranked included economic outcomes, conservation outcomes, and social outcomes, and those are listed in the memo. And the key findings are that the HCP scenario generates the greatest total harvest volume over the 75-year time frame of the HCP. ODF's costs are lowest under the HCP scenario. Net revenue is greatest for the HCP scenario, followed by the draft forest management plan, and finally the current forest management plan. The HCP scenario would result in the protection and stewardship of more suitable habitat for covered species within areas designated for conservation relative to the other forest management plans. And the current forest management plan and the HCP both have strong conservation outcomes for terrestrial species, but the current forest management plan results in increased suitable habitat for covered species in the entire permit area. The HCP conservation areas protect larger, less fragmented, occupied, and suitable habitat for covered species. And the strategies for aquatic species for all three scenarios are strong. However, the HCP provides the best potential outcomes. And those are close if you look at that executive summary of the detailed report itself, but the HCP sort of edges those out for the aquatic species conservation outcomes. Carbon sequestration is highest under the current forest management plan due to the anticipated reductions in harvest levels over time following a take avoidance strategy. And then all of the management scenarios provide benefits for recreation opportunities and culturally significant uses. However, the funding stability provided by the HCP provides more opportunities for investment. So in sum, the comparative analysis indicates that economic, conservation, and social outcomes would be more reliable and provide greater benefits when considering uncertainties under an HCP than under the draft forest management plan or the current forest management plan scenarios, and therefore supports inclusion of common school forest lands in the HCP. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Madam Chair, I might ask a question if that's okay.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Thanks. I certainly would not hold myself out as a person who's read every detail or followed every individual step of the process, but I have seen some pretty pointed criticism of the HCP, and I wonder how you might just summarize that and how you've taken in that criticism, please.
Yes, Governor Brown, Treasurer Reed. At that Board of Forestry hearing last week, they took a lot of written and verbal testimony, and I think to summarize it is basically that the HCP approach puts a lot of the forest, roughly half of the forest lands, into conservation status, meaning limited or no harvest in those areas. And so understandably, there are concerns because that, basically the projected harvest levels are much lower than historic harvest levels. And so of course there's disagreement about what is a sustainable level of harvest and what isn't, but basically that is a big concern from a lot of stakeholders. And then related to that also is that the analysis done in the comparative analysis and the analysis that's done as part of the HCP is really focused on conservation and environmental outcomes and doesn't take into the socioeconomic effects of different harvest levels. And that's just part of what how the HCP process is. The HCP process is about Endangered Species Act compliance. Those kinds of things will be looked at and analyzed as part of the NEPA analysis, is my understanding. And that NEPA process is going to be about a 2-year process. So it's a long, extended process to do that type of analysis. But those were the concerns, and those were raised loud and clear at that hearing last week.
Thank you. Maybe just one follow-up. So if I understood you correctly, the assertion you're making is that about the interaction between a lower level but greater certainty, is that what allows you to say sort of the greatest economic value?
That's definitely from my understanding and from the Department of State Lands perspective on this. Basically with an HCP, you're basically agreeing with the services or entering into an agreement with the Fish and Wildlife Service and National Marine Fisheries Service, or NOAA, to do certain conservation actions and activities over the period of the HCP in exchange for getting what's called an incidental take statement or permit, which basically allows you protection under the Endangered Species Act from lawsuits and enforcement for the effects on those species of harvest activities. And so what that means is that you are conserving, but also hopefully in a sustainable way, and able to harvest in the future without the threat of lawsuits and without, also another big benefit is with the take avoidance approach. Basically, if endangered species are identified in a particular area of the forest, then that area is off limits to harvest because you can't take that species when you harvest. And so over time, the models predict that you'll have an increase in old growth or complex forest stand structure, which will result in more habitat for those protected species over time and a reduction in harvestable areas if you don't have a permit to allow take of those species.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Secretary Clarno, any questions or comments?
No, I just thank you for the information and worry about the fact that I think part of the endangered species that we don't always look at is our student population, and having the ability to raise funds for our kids for education is always a concern for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Clarno. Bill, just two quick comments. Number one, my understanding of the harvest levels under the HCP is that they're actually higher than under the current forest management plan. Is that correct?
That is correct from the modeling and the comparative analysis.
And then another comment. I will just say that the Board of Forestry voted unanimously to take this HCP approach, which from my perspective and the diversity of perspectives on the Board of Forestry is really extraordinary. So that's a good thing. So, all right, with that, we think you're off the hook, and I'm going to turn it over to Director Walker to wrap up our agenda.
Thank you, Governor. I just have two things under other today. One will be a reminder, and then the other one is I wanted to highlight someone who joined our DSL family in July. Leanne O'Neill is sitting across from me about 15 feet away. She joined our communications team with Allie Ryan Hansen, who was overwhelmed because of all the work that we're doing here at the department, and we just needed the extra help. Leanne has been a powerhouse out of the gate, and she recently served on the Joint Information Center team as leading media relations because she has a background in strategic communications, and we thought it would be a great experience for her. And as you know, the agencies are encouraged and advised to submit staff to serve on the Joint Information Center, but we don't always have the staff. So we were glad to put Leanne in charge. And I think you just finished up your term there, Leanne? Yeah, and now she's being asked to be on yet another committee to, what is that, Leanne? Oh, EPIC, yes. So her skills will be put to use in other places on behalf of the state as well. She's also working on our website, which we've needed to update for a long time. Again, Allie is overwhelmed with everything that I give her to do. But most importantly, I want you to know that we've started a social media campaign for our unclaimed property program to help holders who are holders of property or money or checks that belong to Oregonians, to encourage them to turn them over to the Department of State Lands as they're required to do. Less than 10%, about 10% of the holders in this state turn over the things that we need them to do because they either don't know about it or they haven't done it yet. And that actually is about the same as the national average. So Leanne's taking her skills and trying to increase that awareness through social media and has done a great job already. We have just recently sent out a press release and started a campaign to automatically return some funds to folks so we don't have to make them wait. And that was an encouragement from leadership, legislative leadership, and the governor's office and the land board. I believe it was the land board asking us to get money in the hands of Oregonians who are really needing it right now in this pandemic and certainly in the wildfire season. So we are doing a great job getting it ready for transfer over to Treasury. In about a year, we'll be fully transferring that program over to Treasury, but we are not stopping our work, Treasurer Reed. We are going to make sure we turn it over to you in a very robust manner. So I want to thank Leanne for that. And then the next item that I wanted to impart to you was a reminder that your next meeting is December 8th. And it will be all things Elliott State Forest. We'll be talking about the HCP. We'll be talking about the research forest. And today was our first experiment at a live Zoom meeting. So we worked out the kinks. And our next meeting in December will be pretty robust. We'll be having participation by people on our Zoom call beyond just our network here. So it will be a very robust meeting. It will be Secretary Clarno's last meeting, official land board meeting with us before she retires once again. How many times have you retired now, Madam Secretary?
Oh, four or five.
All right, well, we're just going to keep bringing you back. I understand Matt Garrett has just been brought back from retirement to lead an effort on your behalf, Governor. So we don't let good people go away for very long. And I appreciate the foresight the Governor had in bringing you on board, Madam Secretary, and I know you're anxious to have something to say about the Elliott when we get there in December, and we're going to get there. It's been a comprehensive, robust conversation for the last 2 years with the advisory committee, and I have to say I'm very pleased with where we are. It's been a little rocky once in a while, but that's what we expect with a diversity of opinion and thought. But we're in the chute, and I think we're going to deliver on December 8th. So that is my final comment for you today, Governor and members of the Land Board.
All right. Well, unless Secretary Clarno or Treasurer Reed have any further comments, I want to say thank you to everyone for participating today. And Director Walker, thank you to you and your team for their great job. And we look forward to seeing everyone on a Zoom room to talk about the Elliott on December 8th, I assume, same time, 10 to 12. And please stay safe out there and be careful. So take good care. We're adjourned.